strangulation.
The local man charged in connection with his wife's death.
And safety concerns after a boating accident on Smith Mountain Lake.
There's a lot of responsibility when you get behind the wheel of a boat, and you need to take that responsibility seriously.
What you need to know before hitting the water. After nearly a 4-month-long investigation into a political scandal that made headlines across the country, there are still no answers tonight.
Attorneys were not able to determine if Virginia Governor Ralph Northam was in a racist picture on his yearbook page. Northam released a statement saying that he cooperated with the investigation, reiterating, quote, "I am not in the racist and offensive photo that appears under my name in the 1984 Eastern Virginia Medical School yearbook." 10 News reporter Shane Dwyer is live in Richmond with more on the findings. Shane.
Brittany and Lindsay, more than 50 people were interviewed as part of this investigation process. And at the end of it, it seems like we are no closer to the truth than before it started. Now, the report says that they cannot identify whether or not the governor is one of those people in that racist photo. And Governor Northam continues to say, it's not me.
We cannot change the past, but we can refuse to be defined by it.
That's Eastern Virginia Medical School President Dr. Richard Homan Wednesday defending the investigation. It was launched within hours of this photo hitting the internet back in February. A person in blackface and another in a Klan outfit on Governor Ralph Northam's 1984 yearbook page.
Was it more important to determine how a photo made it into a yearbook with an EVMS name on it, or was it more important to determine if that was or was not the governor in one of those photos?
The school was not as concerned about who was in the photo than about the situation on campus through the years.
Lawyers who did the work say those they interviewed did not say it was the governor, and no one came forward to say it was. They also can't say if the photo's placement was a mistake, like the governor continues to claim. The investigation does, however, point to the governor's inner circle as to why he apologized and then later reversed course.
Because he wasn't saying 100% as other politicians might have said, they said you can either deny it outright or you can apologize for it. Those are your only two choices.
The governor telling investigators he erred on the side of caution and then regretted it. The investigation also revealed that the school president knew about the photo for a few years and didn't tell anyone.
We're apolitical, and I did not feel that that was a necessary disclosure I needed to make.
Despite saying that they are apolitical, some people are questioning the integrity of this investigation and calling into question whether or not there are any conflict of interest. That includes the NAACP. I'm working on that part of the story, and we'll have it coming up tonight in my live report at 10 News at 6. Live in Richmond, Shane Dwyer, 10 News, working for you.